Hi, thanks for joining me. This is Jessie, and this is my channel, Caffeine Bookworm, and I'm here to review My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I got this as an ARC from NetGalley, which I was really surprised about because my NetGalley review percentage is absolute shit. But thank you for giving it to me anyway. I was super excited to get it because I've been wanting to read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I just haven't gotten around to it, but since they were kind enough to give me the ARC of this, I knew I had to buckle down and get this read and reviewed so that I could help out my percentage a little bit, but also read a Stephen Graham Jones novel. We might be witnessing the bloody birth of a subgenre here. I'm not really sure what to call it, but I'm talking about my best friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and more tangentially, Rabbits by Terry Miles. Like I said, I'm not really sure what to call it. Maybe 80s horror chic or nostalgia satire? I don't fucking know. Anyways, so this next part is going to seem like I'm bird walking, but I'm really not, I promise. Just bear with me. So right before I started reading My Heart is a Chainsaw, John and I started binge watching Doom Patrol, and I have no fucking clue how I got sucked into that because I normally don't watch stuff like Doom Patrol. I stopped watching Happy after the first season, possibly before the end of the first season, because that shit got weird quick. I hate Deadpool, and by extension, Ryan fucking Reynolds. And so, like I said, I have no idea how I got sucked into this, but I binge watched the shit out of Doom Patrol, and I may start it over because I, for some fucking reason, loved it so much, and I can probably binge watch it all again before season 3 drops at the end of September. So, anyways, so we're watching Doom Patrol, and I start referring to Jane as Jade, and John's like, "No, not Jade, Jane," and I'm like, "Okay." But it doesn't take long before, when I'm reading My Heart is a Chainsaw, I start imagining Jade as Jane. And then from there I start seeing Letha Mondragon as Miranda, Jade's later incarnation as Hammerhead, and maybe Mr. Holmes or Hardy as the Chief. So we can see how my brain works in a seriously messed up way, right? Okay, and it's not hard to connect that with the things that I learned in some of my psych classes about how easy it is to manipulate memories. But anyways, so we have Sven and Lottie at the beginning, and big fucking spoiler alert, they die. Oh, okay. So we have Sven and Lottie at the beginning, and they are in Proof Rock, Idaho, for God knows what reason, from the Netherlands. My understanding is that they are either like a foreign exchange student, they're foreign exchange students of some sort, or maybe this is the immersion part of a language course for college. I don't fucking know. But so they're about to go skinny dipping in Indian Lake, and Lottie is recording this. So she runs and jumps off a pier, but Sven doesn't hear the splash, and so he walks to the end of the pier, and Lottie's in a canoe. So Sven gets into the canoe, and they row out, and her video is still recording on her phone, and guess what it records? Their murder? Oh my god, you're so fucking correct, you get a fucking star. Yes, okay. So, anyways, so that's like the prologue. And then we have Jade. Then we have Jade, who is this fucking town pariah. She's Indian. She's got constantly changing hair color. She is obsessed with horror slasher films. She's a little strangeling. She writes whole essays on slashers for her all-suffering teacher, history teacher, Mr. Holmes, who usually accepts them. Every once in a while, he'll make her write an actual history paper to turn in. But her focus seems to mostly be on the development of the final girl character. Also, like the elements of a slasher film, like what needs to take place in a slasher film for it to be slasher filmy. So she also works part-time as a janitor, during which she mostly avoids the other janitor, who is a perv who has video cameras hidden in the building. And her home life is a fucking dumpster fire. So her mother is really not in the picture, even though she is in the picture because she's in the same town. Jade doesn't really see her except for when she goes to the dollar store that she works at to steal hair dye. And her father is a drunk ass fucking sleazeball with drunk ass fucking sleazeball friends. Jade gets into an argument with her father. I think it was either about something one of his sleazeball friends said to her, or maybe he was ogling her or something, and her father didn't speak up or say anything about it. So they get into an argument, and then her father starts getting into her face, and Jade just kind of turns around and walks out. She grabs her coveralls, her janitor coveralls, on her way because it's cold out. And then somehow she ends up in like a construction area where there's some guys around a bonfire, and they're kind of, I guess, toasting to a friend that just died. She's not really sure what's happening there, but she meets shooting glasses. Well, she calls them shooting glasses. She gets into a car with shooting glasses. This is back and forth about how the car was stolen because they just found it in the lot and nobody ever came to claim it. But she kind of talks herself into a frenzy talking to shooting glasses, and for a moment there you think they have a connection, but then Jade gets out of the car and she starts running. She runs to Indian Lake. She gets into the town canoe. She rows out into the lake. Shooting glasses is on shore, kind of freaking out a little bit, and then she slices her wrist. So shooting glasses calls the town sheriff and enter that element of the slasher film, which is the law enforcement aspect. And so we have Hardy. Now, Hardy lost his daughter in Indian Lake years before. James, her boyfriend at the time, who eventually moved away, but was friends with Jade's father and his other sleazeball friends way back when. Small town, you know? So he goes to the canoe. He gets in the canoe. He rows it to shore. He gets out of the canoe. He's wading through the water, and he's carrying Jade, and he's screaming that she's not going to die on his watch. It's all very dramatic. So he gets Jade to the hospital. They, I guess, stitch her up, sew her up, or glue her up, or something. I don't know. And they put her in a treatment facility where she is out for 8 weeks. So she's out of school for 8 weeks. She feels a little bit gypped because one of those 8 weeks was spring break, so she technically only missed 7 weeks of school. But when she gets out of the treatment facility, Hardy is there to drive her back. And he's trying, he really is. And he's trying to feel out, like, how her mental state is at this point. But right before he drops her off at school, he hands her belongings, which are in an envelope, and she's kind of surprised at the heaviness of it because she didn't really have anything on her. So she dumps out the belongings, while she's still in I think it was a Bronco Cruiser. And there's a pink bedazzled phone in there. Now, Jade has had her phone the entire time she was in the treatment facility, but she doesn't say anything to Hardy because then she won't have 2 phones. But she doesn't understand how Hardy could think that pink bedazzled thing is hers. But she gets out of the car and she goes to school. So she's in the bathroom, I guess putting on her makeup or something, and enter Letha Mondragon. I can imagine in Jade's head when she turns and she sees Letha Mondragon for the first time, like there's like light behind her illuminating her, and angels singing, and Jade kind of falls into her fucking head and starts building Letha into this final girl. She is absolutely certain that she's going to be the final girl in Proof Rock's very own, honest to God, hope to fucking die, no pun intended or pun intended, slasher. And so, I mean, it's gotta be awkward for Letha standing there because Jade just kind of staring at her quietly. And then finally she introduces herself. Letha has just moved to town with her father and could be her sister's stepmother. And so Jade kind of works that into her assumption that this is turning into a slasher film. They've moved in ahead of the completion of development of some houses on forested land. All of the houses are going to be owned by these really like super rich elite people. Like all the men are like in their like 40s, but they're like 40s and 50s, but they're still like super fit, and they're all really like, they all seem like really nice, in a not quite condescending way. Locals refer to the land that they're building on as Camp Blood, because actually Proof Rock has already had its very own real life, honest to God slasher, and that was with Stacey Graves. Now Stacey Graves was a fucking tragedy, but the fucking tragedy behind what eventually turned her into the legend of Stacey Graves doesn't quite overshadow the horror that ensued. But you learn all about that in the school bathroom. Like, the reaction that Jade has, again, is kind of maybe partially jealous, a little bit infatuated, definitely obsessed. And so she immediately starts, like I said, building Letha up in her mind as the final girl. Um, they part ways. They don't really have too many words in the bathroom. You know, they don't become instant best friends or anything. But she knows that Letha is really, really, really super nice. And so that's another aspect of the final girl to Jade. She has to be like pure and virginal and amazingly nice and astoundingly beautiful. And to Jade, Letha is all those things. So Jade now Jade now has a purpose in life. And no, it's not to graduate because she's so close and she's failing and she needs to be really working on her schoolwork. And no, it's not to stab the trash with that little stabby thing where you pick up trash from the ground and you put it into the plastic bag on your hip. No, her goal in life is to turn Letha into the final girl that she knows she can be. So she makes Letha a care package of sorts. And now this care package includes a letter from Jade, some of her essays that she had turned into Mr. Holmes, and a slasher film. And she wraps it all up in her jeans and gives it to Letha. Jade has a moment where she's thinking, okay, well, maybe this isn't what I think it is. Maybe this is all in my head, like everybody says, and there's not actually a slasher about to happen. Then Letha finds a body. Can you guess whose body it is? It's not Lottie's. It's Sven's. Yes, very good. Okay, so she finds Sven's body, and that cements it for Jade. Jade is like, okay, so the final girl is the one who's supposed to find the bodies, and she does eventually find more bodies. It's like, okay, this is it. I know this is going to happen. And so she's trying to get Letha to talk to her, and Letha meets her at a bench that was named in memoriam to Hardy's daughter who died. Jade isn't the only one who's been analyzing, you know, the situation for clues as to what's really going on. Letha has read and reread Jade's letter in her care package and has come to the conclusion that underneath the horror hound town pariah facade that Jade has cloaked herself with, that there's actually a tragedy beneath that caused Jade to latch on in an unhealthy way to the horror films that she has. And so she brings in Sheriff Hardy, who then brings in Mr. Holmes, and after reading and rereading her letter, they all have come to the same conclusion, which is that Jade's father has done something unspeakable to her. And maybe that's why Jade's mother isn't in the picture, why she can't look her in the eye. They kind of bombard her at that bench, and Jade feels betrayed by Letha a little bit. But still in her head, she's like, I'm going to forgive this because that's what a final girl would do. A final girl, her heart is so big that she would see this. But Jade's like, this isn't what you think it is. This didn't happen. And you're not going to get me to say it happened because I'm not going to fall for your big heart trap. He takes her and puts her in jail because he thinks that this thing that is threatening to devour Jade whole is also something that is threatening to be released through Jade onto the town. And so he takes her and he kind of puts her in a jail cell, and she's like, you can't hold me, you have to charge me or release me. He's like, no, technically I can hold you for 48 hours. Then something happens, another body shows up, he runs, Jade escapes. Yeah, so we see how it goes. Things are not quite what they seem at any given part in this book. And even Jade at some point, you know, with all the characters lining up perfectly for her alleged slasher, she starts seeing, like, they start blurring into gray areas. And so Jade is confronted with her own gray areas. There's a lot of topics in here that, I mean, they sear your heart to look at and you want to look away. But in real life, like, those things, if you look away and you ignore them, they do so much more damage than if you had just let them break your heart so that you can make a change. Anyways, so this has all the blood and gore, like, to make it a horror novel, but it's also subtly, like, eviscerating you, it's gutting you, it's sticking its fucking long fingernailed hand down your fucking maw and pulling out your still beating but broken heart out through your mouth. Anyways, can you tell I love this book? It's a great book. I'm gonna stop there before I give you too many more spoilers because I feel like I've given you a lot. So anyways, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful day. Like and subscribe below.